So for the next presentation, okay, that will start at 9:30. So we will have our next distinguished speaker, Prof. Yang Mulia Dr. Raja Affendi Raja Ali. Okay, so Dr. Raja Affendi Raja Ali, a little bit on his background. Okay, he's actually our former dean who just finished his term a few months back. So he graduated with honors in medicine and completed higher diploma in clinical teaching, Master of Medical Science and Doctorate Medicine from the National University of Ireland. And then he underwent higher training in gastroenterology and hepatology and was awarded the certificate of completion of specialist training in the Royal College of Physicians in Ireland. Okay, he's also the fellow of the FRCP in Edinburgh and also American Gastroenterological Association. And he was awarded quite a number of grants from fundamental, transdisciplinary, industrial, and also international research grants, okay, to research on numerous gut-related studies, okay, from inflammatory bowel disease, colorectal cancer, irritable bowel syndrome, and gut microbiome. And he also supervised and co-supervised 39 masters and 9 PhD students, as well as 10 clinical fellows in gastroenterology and endoscopy. He also served as immediate past president of the Malaysia Society of Gastroenterology and Hepatology, treasurer for the Asia Pacific Association of Gastroenterology, educational committee member for the Asian Organization for Crohn's and Colitis, and also clinical research committee member for the World Gastroenterology Organization. And he was also selected by the World Endoscopy Organization to attend the Emerging Stars program for the year 2018 and 19. And also part of the taught modules include how to face the media and deliver effective presentations. Okay, hence this morning session. He also obtained the professional certificate after completing Oxford Executive Leadership Program, and recently completed the Master of Business Administration, okay, at the International University Malaya Wales, okay, and also currently he serves as a professor of medicine and consultant gastroenterologist at this faculty, okay, and also recently he was awarded a researcher of this year for the 24th Medical and Health Research Week. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to invite, okay, yang berbahagia, yang mulia, Prof. Dr. Raja Affendi Raja Ali to give his talk about publishing your work upon graduation. Okay, without further ado, silakan Prof.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih.
Tak dengar.
Salam sejahtera. Ni Dr. Fairuz dengar ya? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Dengar Prof, dengar Prof.
Okay, so thank you for the kind introduction and a very good morning and salam sejahtera to all of you. So my task. Dengar? Hello, testing. I unmute already. The video is on.
Prof Raja, okay Prof. Prof punya sound okay.
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 Fairuz, they can hear me.
Okay, Prof, cuba.
Okay, they can. I got the message. They can hear. Okay. Thank you. Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera. Very good morning. Thank you for the kind introduction, Dr. Fairuz, the chairperson, and my task for the next maybe 40 minutes or so to discuss about. I was given the topic by committee member, and thank you for the kind invitation. Publishing your work upon graduation. So if I may want to change the topic, I will go to myself, publish well before your graduation. I think that's the spirit that all of us should have. So the menu today is a little bit introduction and why writing a research paper, planning before writing up the paper, and how to create a good manuscript, the anatomy of the manuscript, the process of reviewing and publications, and a bit ethics in the publication. Now, first of all, you may ask yourself why we need to publish. I think this is a most important aspect, is a requirement for your successful future graduation, whether you do master or PhD or clinical master, like it or not, you have to produce something. But if the only thing that you think you have to do because of this, so your motivation, determination, and stamina may not be as high as other people who may want also part of the requirement to be a valuable brand in the future, maybe to get the award or reward in the future, to be recognized by your peers in the future. You want to spread the knowledge, or very importantly, to upgrade your academic professional profile in the future, and also to have some enhancement of your CV, and this will potentially will help your better future employment with whatever institution that you want to go in the future. Why not to publish? Well, if the research is of no interest, something that not really useful and out of date, there are a lot of salami or duplication of previously work that been done by somewhere else, or a lot of incorrect or really not acceptable conclusion, the one that have you been done. So you need to get regular meeting supervisors about your research progress. It's very important. So the process of so-called manuscript submission is about a few things. Number one, the lower the quality of your paper, the more pressure, stress, tension, anxiety that you give to the reviewers or any editors of the journal that you submitted. Now, you also have to remember reviewers and editors also perform their own research. They also teach students, they also practicing clinicians and scientists, so they're very busy species. So you really have to contribute to a good research work for them to read your manuscript, because you really take their time, and it's very important not to upset the one who going to read your manuscript. So you don't want just to submit with a poor quality. So you better get a lot of checklist. Now, before publishing your work, a couple of things you have to have. You really have to plan in your mind, mind mapping, what you have to do. You have to have a PAP, project action plan. It's like the Gantt chart, So next 1 month, what you're going to do, July, September, blah, 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 we're going to do, give yourself 4 to 6 months or so. You really have dedicated a project action plan. This is a good to be an engineer as opposed to be science or medical student. Undergrad, postgrad engineers had a really good PAP, project action plan. Have a flavor of reading others' publication to get the feeling of it, to get the starter or appetizer, And you have to strong desire to complete your research work until the end of your research project. So a couple of questions to ask yourself before you start writing. Think about why you want to publish your work. If you say that, this is because I have to graduate, I have to write. Is that the only thing? So you can ask or do some reflection. Now, is it very hot? Is it very interesting? There are a lot of gaps that you have answered. Have you finished recruitment of the patient or whatever that you do, or analyze the results? And have you discussed the findings or the solution or potential issues with your supervisors? Are you ready to publish? If you answer the all yes, meaning that you can start writing up very seriously whatever that you do at the moment of time. Now, there are many types of manuscript. Just now you listen Prof. Jemima about systematic review, but the most powerful one indeed is the full articles, original articles. These are the most important papers. Gather together all the pieces of research that you do and come up with a very powerful one. There's also letters or short communication, which is easier, shorter, also can be original. You commenting about people's work. Review papers, you summarize all the latest development. Meta-analysis, analysis of analysis, you heard just now. Usually by invitation, but not always. It's no harm, can be start as your appetizer. You summarize other people's work and development and come out with your forest plot, what is the best in favor of that treatment or not in that treatment. To get a quick, easy win, first, a case report, a case that you see if you are a clinical master student, a real one. What are the cases that have not been seen? Maybe the number of cases, 1 or 2 cases per million or 10 million or so, must be a real one, a rare one that to be reported. And also case series, you gather plenty of series of single case, gathering a lot of information over the time and come up with that. There are many others, of course, systematic review just now. You can publish original randomized clinical trial as a pilot that you're doing. And by far, the full original articles is the most powerful weapon of future branding for your future career. And also ask your colleagues, your supervisor for advice. And from the beginning of your studies, there is no harm to write a review of the topic that you're going to do. And then you do experiments or whatever research that you're doing, and you come up with another original cases, or you see some report in scientific issues or clinical case report. So you keep publishing in the same arena that you're doing. For example, if I give you the cases, if I ask the student to write something about IBD, maybe throw a review article, what is the development of IBD at the moment, such as in epidemiology, in laboratory issues, in complication issues, in therapeutics, you choose one of them. Maybe put on original aspect of science that he or she doing at the moment, looking for some gene or some transcriptomic analysis, something. And also a clinical master may have some unusual complication of Crohn's disease that affecting patients, for example, pyoderma gangrenosum, for example, or various rare extraintestinal manifestation. So by right, whatever numbers that you do, you don't need to be worried about. By the time you graduate, you get all the numbers, the quantity of, or maybe high impact paper as well. So you don't need to be worried for your graduation. Now, you really need to identify the right readers and journals for your manuscript. So usually this will be led or will be given by your supervisor, the advice, but you yourself also can discover a lot of things you can Google now. If you do some disease A, what are the journals? For example, in the highest hierarchy for gastroenterology specialized in inflammatory bowel disease, you go to journal Crohn's colitis. So the supervisor, in my opinion, must know who are the key opinion leaders in that aspect, in that particular topic, what journals are the highlight of the journals. So you really have to verify the highly specific of your topic and the suitability of the journals. You don't want to present something that you do in the different journals. For example, you do the heart failure in the endocrine journals, or you do something that some overlapping, but still using the same journal. You also have to determine your range of interest, whether you need to aim at local journals, regional journals, or international. But I think I'd be very happy to aim the highest journal, go for international, but happy with the local if they're accepted. For example, you aim for the first class, you'll be happy with the second class upper. You aim for second upper, you'll be happy with the second class lower. So aim high so that your drive will be there. So identify the best journal. Sometimes take skills to get it. You need to review any recent publication, let's say for the last 2 years or so, on each candidate journal and find the hot topics. And I always advise during the journal club, if your supervisors arrange a journal club among the student, perhaps supervisor or yourself can initiate a look at the previous 5 years, what is the hot topics for you to explore, so that you know what's going on, and choose the highest top 10% journals. What are they discussing about? Some cell biology or some rare diseases or any clinical entities that people has not been explored or deep dive so far. You also ask yourself a question: is a journal peer review? In other words, is your manuscript will be reviewed by the expert before they actually publish? Or you want to send to the journal your friend review, you delighted, and this is really short syndrome syndrome, so you have to be careful in that. Who is this journal's audience? Is it scientific communities or just public communities? How long it times to take to publish from the time that you submit? The highest the impact factor, the faster the way that they publish. What is the journal impact factor? I'll go through a little bit after this. What is the journal APC, article processing charges? Because some high impact journals Q1, you probably need 10 or 15,000 ringgit. So you need to ask yourself or perhaps your supervisor, do you have the budget for that? That's why having the grant is very important, so that you can budget from the beginning. So you have to decide eventually a single journal, and please do not submit to multiple journals because you don't know, there could be a duplication of the publication, which is non-ethical. And of course, very important, avoid predatory journals. And you have to study clearly, these journals are actually just want to get money from you, and they're actually not listed in the many platform that's supposed to be open access and many other platforms. So discuss with your supervisors. Now, for example, if I Google gastroenterology journals, quarter one, ranking number 1 to the top 10. So these are the highest impact factor journals. You can Google any journal you want of your specialties. So the Nature Review Gastro Gut, and for IBD, Journal Crohn Colitis. So these are the top 10, depending on the quality of the research project you are doing. So your supervisor should know this about which journal that you want to be submitted. If you think that the research work that you do not so high, then perhaps you can aim for the Q3 or quarter 3 or quarter 4. So you can range in the respective topics or a journal that you want to submit. So these are also the skills. And also, you can also Google Scholar the top publications with a hash index in terms of what journals again that you really want to submit. And quite important, you need get, or mostly supervisor get the sense what journal that really accepted. Don't aim too low, aim high first and get the comments from the high impact reviewers so that you can modify it and do some correction and resubmit to the different, even still higher ranked journal. So if you look at the updated this year, June, you can see that many journals are with very, very high impact factors. And of course, it depends on the type of research that you're doing, whether you want to publish in this journal, do you have capability or not? But it's good to aim high and see the high performance cultures of publishing the work that you do. Now, what makes a good manuscript? I think it's quite simple. The manuscript must have a message that with full of clarity and very has a wow and triggering factors for the readers, including the editors or the reviewers. The flows of writing the manuscript must have a logical manner that the reader can follow quite easily from the introduction. I will show you the anatomy of this. And the manuscript is formatted to best showcase the material. And it's well written, and the style that transmit the message, the learning point clearly and precisely to the readers or to the reviewers in the beginning of the submission. Now, wording is also an issue. Remember, when you write a journal, you're not in the classical history English classes. Try to avoid your a lot of play around with the words. You can imagine the journal will give you 3,000, 5,000 words, so they are very precious and limited. You have to be very straightforward, concise, and avoid mouthful words or verbal diarrhea or regurgitation of unnecessary words. You want to just mention one point, but you come up with 3 sentences, so cut it down. Reading from many manuscripts that you take from your references are very important to get how you can tackle straight to the points. And I found that very useful reading the editorial of very high impact journals because the editor gives some message, some critical appraisal, something that what you can do better from the paper that has been published. Very helpful. And of course, get your buddy to comment and your supervisors and get your co-authors also busy to write, to read and give a critics rather than just his or her name stick there in the publication. Now, it's all about the readers, including more importantly, the reviewers. And writing a good manuscript, I must admit, it's not easy. You really have to be smart, sharp, and working very hard. You really have to, enjoy and cherish your research work. If you don't take care of this, I mean, why the journal want to take care of your work? It doesn't make sense. There's no secret recipe for success. I think 3 Ds. I always mention to myself, discipline, determination, dedication to finish it off your research work and publish elegantly. And editors and reviewers are also, don't forget, they're also busy scientists and clinicians, just like all of you, and make their life easier. And presentation is super critical. Now, these are the anatomical structure of a manuscript. Of course, you have the titles in the beginning. You have to decide who are the first author, who is the corresponding author from the day one. Don't fight at the end of the submission. Everybody want to be the corresponding authors to fulfill his or her KPI. So the leaders, research leaders should know this from the beginning. The student, those who give the ideas, there are many contributions. Writing the abstract depends on the journals, could be 150, 200, 300 words maximum. What are the keywords that you're going to use in your journals? And the main text, which is IMRAD, which is introduction, methodology, result, discussion, and conclusion. And of course, acknowledgement references, depending on the journals, whether Vancouver or APA, and many appendices or supplementary material, if any. So if you look at the top one, becoming high, the abstract becoming very important for the readers to judge how good your work is. It's like reading the executive summary of research proposal. To get acknowledgement references at very low supplementary. So you really have to shine from the first 200, 300 words. If not written nicely, then it shut down a lot of reviewers and editors. So this is very important anatomical structures of papers or manuscript, the one that you submit to any journals. But in real life, we are writing backwards actually. We come up with the figures and tables. We do the method, we put the results and discussion, conclusion, introduction, and all of this, then we come out with a very nice, solid abstract, an introduction and title, because each section has definitely a different purpose or serve differently in terms of how you elaborate the tables, because you don't know what's the result of the experiments or the clinical recruitment that you have before you come out. The title might be changed, the one that you designed before, because depending on the results of the research work that you're doing. Now, creating a title of the papers is also a skill, remember, those who are going to read your papers, he or she would like to cite your articles if you write this very nicely. There are few elements to create a good titles. A particular contains that particular aspect of system that you study. If you study cell biology, if you study clinical recruitment, randomized clinical trial, if you do animal models, so you choose particular aspect, variables that you're going to manipulate, and contribution methods that you're going to highlight. So in one sentence, not too long, embedded all these important elements. And reviewer also will check the title, whether it's specific or not, and reflects also, the title will also reflect the whole contents of your paper's manuscript. And editors or reviewer really hates the title that make no sense, or really fail to highlight, to represent the subject matter that you address in the content of the manuscript. Of course, do not use abbreviation. You think that abbreviation, in your case, CRC could be colorectal cancer, but it could be clinical research center too. And do not afraid to use to be grammatically creative. Something wow, something that you learn from. This is if you read a lot of story books before you read many books, that sometimes you can get some creative words to come out with the titles, which is really wow to the readers. And also you can discuss with your supervisor and co-authors about the title. Now, writing the abstract, usually self-contained, has to be very attractive, and you have the introductions, usually about 1 or 2 lines. The total abstracts about, depending on the journal, sometimes 200 or 300. And the abstract is like a selling point. It's like your initial branding of your research work, how you advertise your article, your manuscript, really. So you are telling the prospective readers what you have done, what you have performed in your experiments of recruitment of the patient, and you highlight the key exciting findings, something that you unexpectedly found during your research work. Of course, you want to avoid the uncommon abbreviation. You want to use a very precise accuracies or specificities, and a clear abstract really influence whether your work, whether your future work will be considered or not. And I said to you, there's a limitation a lot of English language need to be really good in this. And then most experienced researchers can edit your abstract if you ask your supervisors very easily, quickly to twist a few things to make it more wow than initially that you written. The 5 elements of abstract. Introduction, usually 1 or 2 sentences. For example, colorectal cancer in the young is rising steadily. The purpose of the study, for example, you can say that little is known how the trending of the colorectal cancer among the young in Malaysia. So you can say that brief statement of what was performed. So retrospective analysis of the patient with colorectal cancer less than 50 years old were performed. And you can say that brief statement of what was found, which is the result. 13% of the colorectal cancer diagnosed for the last 4 decades were from the age of 40 to 50. So something that interesting. And then brief statement of what was concluded. You can say that early onset colorectal cancer before the age 50 is rising for the last 4 decades. All the stakeholders must alert and need to come out with the strategies for a screening program. So something that you can write down a mixture of everything from the beginning introduction, the center question, methodology results, and highlight the key findings. Now, abstract should not contain very lengthy and confusing background and not put any reference in other literature in your abstract. Get rid of the abbreviations or terminology, which is very weird because it can be confusing. Get rid of any illustration of figures, some scientific, I know the European Science Scientific Conference, they would like to put the figures, and abstract could be structured or versus unstructured. So you have to figure it out. Now, after that, they will also ask you the keywords of your manuscript. So it shouldn't be too general or too narrow. So for example, in my arena, it's like colorectal cancer, Crohn's disease, or IBD. And you can also use abbreviation that really well established. If you ask people in Japan, in Europe, in North America, they all know what DNA means, what messenger RNA means. And of course, you need to check the guide for the authors in terms of what you need to use. Next menu is introduction and literature review. Now, this really a chance for you to convince the reader how important is your research work. So the introduction and lit review must be comprehensive, concise, short, and entertaining. You really describe the problem, what have been done previously, what are the main limitations, what are the gaps, and what are the hope that you want to achieve with your research project. You also provide a perspective consistent with the nature of the journal that want you to write an introduction. And you, in the introduction and lit review, you also introduce the main scientific publication that you are working on. You know, so in my opinion, this is also written by a lot of big editors. You really need to cite several landmark papers that related to the topic that you're doing. So for example, if I'm looking at the epidemiology of inflammatory bowel disease, so there's a paper a couple of years ago, a recent and important original landmark papers that really deep dive into the topic. So don't simply choose the journal you like. There must be the original and highlight or landmark papers that you are doing, or the similar project that you want to address the gaps in the research. Now, there could be information seeking or critical appraisal. Information seeking means your ability to scan the literature efficiently. So if you look at the high impact journals, you will not miss the important points. If you just Google, type something not using the high impact journals, then you get a problem. And critical appraisal is your ability to apply the principle of analysis so that you can identify unbiased and valid studies in part of your project. Now, you may think that you can put hundreds of references, it looks good, but it's actually not. You know, people or editor hate references which may not be relevant to your work at all. So it's useless. So do not use many references. And I can say clearly here, the number of references you use is not positive correlated with the relevancy of your work. In other words, it doesn't mean that 100 references mean that your work becoming more relevant. No, it could be 50% are in low impact journals, nothing to do what you're doing. So you have to filter, scan it very, very properly. Now, there are pitfalls of the introduction and review. I mentioned you early on, two were these. Do not change this into your history lesson. A mixed bag of introduction, everything inside. You have to keep the section separately. Discussion is discussion, result is results. And, has the used car salesman feel. So you can imagine people in the used car, they would like to promote for you, to convince you to buy it. So you can imagine how he or she push very hard to get all these used car, even though sometimes the value may be cheaper, but long-term maintenance maybe got you headache. Okay, some expression that the catchy word novelty, this is the game changer, this experiment is a paradigm shift for the future, so do not use excessively. So you have to use sparingly. Now, so after introduction, abstract, title, abstract, introduction, review, and you go to methodology section, perhaps this is an easier section to write. And by right, you should finish this part of your thesis very easy and quickly. In cases of you use the method that actually well established, let's say to create dextran sulfate DSS colitis or animal model that well established in other centers. So it should be experiment described as blah, blah, blah. You can also use references or supplementary material for briefly published procedures. And of course, do not repeat the details of established method. So you don't need to do something the same, to do a repetition that somebody has been established already. And reviewer will criticize any incomplete or incorrect description. And this can lead to auto rejection. So you have to be very careful, not the easiest section, but you really have to know which has been established, which is not, which are the trial and error, which are your new experiments, so and so. Now, after that, the result section is actually describing what is the finding of the experiment or clinical recruitment or any study that you do. You do not interpret the major findings of your research, just describing. And of course, you do not want to hide the data so that you want to do so-called salami publication. You want to produce bit by bit so that you think by the end of your study, you can get so many papers. And in fact, because you are staggering your data, you hide the data, hoping to get your many papers, which is not good, because you may lose evidence to support your conclusion eventually. Some people would like to take all the data and then produce one magic papers covering from A to Z, make more highlight or interesting of your papers. And of course, do subheadings to keep the same result. For example, the results of the first paragraph, patient recruitment, how you recruit the patient from the clinic, from outpatient, from whatever. And then criteria of exclusion, who are they that you excluded, criteria of inclusion, who are they, and then ethical approval that you have this, blah, blah, blah. So easy to understand for the readers. And sometimes you have to integrate some visuals with the text that you use. And of course, try to write a tables or graph or pie chart or anything that you think appropriate with easy and straightforward, and present very briefly and non-complicated, different colors, got headache. Of course, if you see the Nature paper, the figures like create your migraine, but that's a different level. But I think you have to be reasonable in this. Now, appearance of your manuscript really count. You try to avoid the very crowded plots. You use the scale of Y and X exists accordingly, labeling very nicely, and data set that can easily discriminate, not make the readers or reviewers scratching their head to figure out why this up, why this down expression, why the over express, make it easy. Use colors when necessaries, but doesn't mean more colors better. Sometimes more colors get a headache, a migraine. Of course, some publisher would like you to print the colors. Of course, it costs more money. You have to distinguish nicely. And please, there are many technologies nowadays to enhance your image. If you do Western blot or any protein expression or any experiment, do not selectively adjust the image, to get more enhancement of the results. It look better, because there will be forensic analysis of the papers, your papers that you submitted. And try to avoid a very long, useful or boring tables and figures in your manuscript. Now, discussion, in fact, these are the most important and exciting section in your manuscript. In other words, these are the place where you are actually promoting and selling your data set here to the readers, because readers also want to learn from you. And to be honest, many of the manuscripts been rejected because of very poor and weak discussion. You really have to interpret the finding, and you really have to demonstrate your skills, the ability to analyze, synthesize, or evaluate, interpret the reasons very effectively in your papers. And the readers or the reviewer also look for well-supported opinions from the previous published literature in conjunction with what you're doing, and make the discussion corresponding to the results. So the results, now you're describing, but this is you promoting, and you demonstrate your skill to synthesize, evaluate, so and so. And of course, you also can address some limitation in typical clinical masters, the small sample size, because most people start late. If you start early, you won't get any issues. You can address this is not a prospective studies, so retrospective study is not as powerful as prospective studies. So you also need to compare the previous published results in your research work, and do not ignore them, but you can confront it convincingly for the readers that your result is actually much better, much optimal, much presentable, and much practical for the future use for many scientists and clinicians. And sometimes the section of discussion results are combined, so you have to segregate the section nicely. Now, the statement of discussion, you have to be careful not to go beyond what you're doing. Don't discuss too much the aspect you don't even do. For example, gene editing, CRISPR, you don't even do some other analysis, but you comment heavily inside that. And suddenly you come out with all this new terminology and new ideas, nothing to do with what you're doing. We have title and all this literature review. And you do so much speculation on your interpretation, so you should stick to the facts that you or findings. And also the quality of figures and justifications has to be top class. And revision of what you written, results, the finding and discussion are very important. And sometimes you cannot clarify your ideas in word because some critical items have not been studied substantially. So you really have to minimize the discussion part, because it may be beyond what you're doing, which is not good. Now, quite important to use this. We all, the English is not our mother tongue, so very important to use what tenses. For example, the present tense for a very known facts and hypothesis. So for example, here I put down the incubation period for hepatitis B is between 6 weeks to 6 months. The past tense is for the experiments have you conducted in the past, or the recruitment strategies, or whatever that you optimize your whatever things that you do. For example, in the case of IBD, all the DSS-induced colitis were maintained in a room temperature. So in other words, another example, all patients diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease from 1997 to 2021 were recruited. So this is a past tense, because you have done the recruitment, the experiment. Past tense also used when you describe the results. For example, the average life span for DSS-induced colitis in room temperature was 6 months. So whatever the section of the results, that everything use past tense. So don't mix up everything. the present tense and past tense. The future tense, perhaps a lot of in the discussion where you like to recommend the future work that should be done, take into account these factors that we have not explored. So these are the skills that really make the readers enjoy reading your manuscript, right? Now, in the conclusion part is actually to tell the readers how actually your work advances in the field that you choose at the present state of knowledge, So without a good style full of clarity of conclusion, the readers or the reviewers in particular will find it difficult to judge. Is it to publish? Is it to accept? Is it to reject? Is it major revision or what? So you really have to, and it reflects the title of your project, for example. So you really nail down all the findings in the effective way. And of course, you do not want to repeat what in the abstract or in the experimental that you're doing. And you have to really provide a clear scientific justification for your work. And you also can suggest future work exploring a bigger sample size is required to validate this finding, something like to suggest for the future researcher to cite and to do more work that we have done before. Of course, you have to acknowledge a lot of people. You have to recognize people who may help your research, because there's no doubt in good performing research team, you may want to use them again in the future, not to use, help their help again. And people who are assisted in your study, you may ignore, like your funders, your research assistant, your science officer, your student, in my case, endoscopy staff, your advisors, your mentors, whoever give the ideas. So you may need to acknowledge at the bottom of your manuscript. Now, references, in fact, is the section where most mistakes are made, because some references may not be relevant at all to what you're doing, because you think you get 100 references, you are better. Of course, the number of references differ from master level and PhD level, but you need to get a good quality of references. So a lot of people use many platforms, or EndNote is whatever version that you're doing now, and poor references, wrong citations, wrong references to different work is giving the most annoying headache to the editors or reviewers. So you must look after this quite well. Now, you have to cite the main landmark scientific publication based on your work you're doing. So you have to avoid inflations of your manuscript with too many references, which may not be relevant at all, And there are technology now you can use, can't remember what exactly, but sometimes you just read the abstract of the papers. You don't even read the full papers. You just cite to make you're busy with the references, which is not good, because it doesn't make your manuscript even better. Some people like to do self-citation. Previous work that they're doing, they want to cite. So don't do too much on this. Be moderate in that, And of course, you want to make the reference of the same research group. For example, research group in University A who do a lot of this, and you keep the same group of the citation that you in reference, which is trying to avoid it. So publishing process, there are many, ranging from looking for the suitable of the journals, or even conference proceeding. Sometimes you have a research project, you look at something like gut microbiota in patients with diabetes. So maybe your conference could be diabetes, or could be gastroenterology or any microbiology. So you need to sometimes to choose or to highlight your work to get diabetologists open their eyes. There are ways that how we can manipulate the gut microbiota to improve the control of diabetes. So you make own judgment, and of course in discussion with your supervisors. Of course, you have to prepare your papers, your manuscript, your cover letter. Sometimes you need to get all the details about your author and co-authors, affiliation, and short biography in some journals, potential reviewers. Your supervisor, in my opinion, must know who are the key opinion leaders in the topic that you are doing. If he or she don't know, meaning that is something not right there, which is not good, but try not to use the readers of your best friend because you want to get easy read and minor revision. The same principle to invite the examiners for your master or PhDs. Avoid to get your best buddies, avoid to get people that you know. What's the point? You want to get pleas from them, and in fact, the quality is not there. So try to get the hardest, the world-renowned, original renowned leaders in that field. So you can imagine a lot of things that we can learn for the future research. So we can learn something. So don't afraid of major correction. But if you design the research methodology right from the beginning, why you need to be afraid of? So be ready for that. Submission to the journals, and of course, how the reviewers handling your manuscript and how you address the critics and comments, and whether this is accepted, reject, or revision. And rejection is normal physiological process. Nowadays, you don't need to be sad about this. You try to another journals, perhaps lower than the journal's rank of the one that you submitted earlier, or different scope of the journal, but still relevant to your project. Now, the cover letter is quite important. Sometimes we ask the student to write, not to abuse them, but so that they can learn how to write a cover letter. And this is like a letter that you would like to apply for the new job, or you want to promote and selling your research that you have done. What interesting finding. So it would be nice to have an eye-opener for the editors to read your cover letters. So do not summarize very lengthy or repeat the abstract. Mention what is special about the finding that you have done, or you were from the result of your experiment. And I'll bet the most editor will not reject manuscript only because the cover letter is bad, but a good cover letter may accelerate the process of reviewing and editoring of your papers. So, some people write writing from the heart, not just copy and paste the abstract. It will not be useful. So why you think your papers actually have A+? Why would be eye-catching to many readers, scientific community? So something like that. So this is, for example, a cover letter that we wrote. For example, this in the PLOS Pathogen. Recently, I'm pleased to submit an original research article entitled "This" for consideration in PLOS Pathogen. In this manuscript, we found that probiotic expedition have a positive effect or blah, blah, blah. Interestingly, our randomized control trial found that probiotic supplementation significantly increased the composition of all these funny bacteria. And additionally, the few gut microbiome function and metabolic powers were also altered as a result of the manipulation of the gut microbiota. So we strongly believe that this manuscript is appropriate for publications, as our focus on the roles of probiotics and our novel findings may create paradigm for future research work for other groups. And of course, you have to declare that the manuscript has not been published so and so. So these are the examples of the cover letter that we can send to the editor-in-chief, in this case, PLOS Pathogen. Now, you also been asked to choose the reviewers, and because this will help the editor to fast track or speed up the process to review more effectively. And as I said you early on, your supervisor should or must know the stars in the chosen field. If not, then you will end up with very haphazard, very difficult to choose, and a lot of rejection of the reviewers. And identify the potential reviewers. You may also choose from the references that you use in the high impact journal and go back to their papers, read carefully. Oh, they're doing something like we're doing, so maybe we can ask them to be reviewers. So again, supervisor must know this. And please not to use the same region. If in Malaysia you want to use same university, for example. So if you're international publication, choose one from the East, one from the West, for example, one from the Europe, one from North America, so that it represents in different parts of the world. So the critics or the comment will be very more helpful. And avoid using your past supervisors or close buddies to use this, and be prepared. Some journals ask 4 reviewers, some 3, so it depends on the journal policy on that. So you need to know, you need to read the guide. The process of submission, starting from yourself here, you do all this one that I mentioned to you, you submit the papers, editor will check a basic requirement, yes or not. So he or she will assign the reviewers, give the comments and recommendation, collect, and then you make decision. They reject to you, so you have to do something else. What are the factors for leading to the rejection? Is it poor quality, or is it can be rescued or not? You accept, then some revision required. You need to revise again, and you resubmit the papers, or accept with no revision, which is not common in the high impact journal. So these are so-called these algorithms, as you like, where your paper and the process from here to all this revise and submit again and to publication here can take weeks and months. But the higher the impact the journal, the faster the process is. So initial editorial review, the system, there are many systems. I think there are many, one manuscript, or depending what journal you do. And editor may reject a manuscript without even sending to review. This is particularly when the abstract of the manuscript was poorly written. There's nothing new. It's like duplicative work of other people doing everywhere in the world. So not even sent to review, just thank you so much. We don't want to publish in our journal. Now, we have to remember that the peer review system is really crowded and congested. And editor wish to use reviewer only for those papers that editor feel there's a good probability of the acceptance. So in other words, if you send to the journal and you get the notification your journal has been sent to reviewer, at least you've passed the first hurdle. So that, and again, the poor quality of work, I'm sorry about this, I don't know how to stop this actually coming out. Is really a disservice to ask reviewer to spend time for poor quality research work. So the editor's duty to be a first filter of the manuscript submitted. Now the checklist, the few reason for early rejection, mostly very poor scope. Paper is of limited interest, specific paper is a routine, nothing major, nothing news. Novelty is significant, not really demonstrated, not justified. So you should check, is your work really can capture international audience, any add-on values of the existing literatures? Is it perspective consistent with the journals and the conclusion drawn from the result very well? And does your work add to the existing body of knowledge? Because it could be many study had done before in Asia Pacific, you want to try to do in Malaysia, doesn't make sense. And because you have done the study does not mean that it's very important, so you need to know that. And the reason for early rejection is preparation is very poor. You don't have a plan, strategy planning to do all this outlining, the one that I mentioned you earlier on. You fail to meet the requirement of that particular journals, maximum 4 figures, you give 5 figures out, so your coverage in introduction literature review is really incomplete or not effective. Really, now it's 2022, the latest reference you use is 2011. So, and of course, the command in the language is also very important. So you should check all this guidance for the authors, again, the word count, how many figures, and you don't want to cite your article 10 times, cite there, and did the first reader of your manuscript easily capture the essence of what you're trying to explain. And reviewing is a process and procedure. Nearly every manuscript requires revisions, it's normal. If you get a lot of revisions, so they actually want you to help you. So don't be take offense and have a high emotional EQ. And minor revision doesn't mean that you can take lightly. They can still reject you. So address all these nicely, the points. And carefully study the comments one by one that given by the reviewers, very important, and reply in the detailed letter of response. There's a technique for that. Second, very important, second revision is quite important. Of course, you have to discuss with your supervisors. All the comment you cut and paste and address it, and don't miss any point specific to address the problem that you have, and provide a scientific response with a solid, polite rebuttal, and so that the editors or reviewers will be very happy. Now, do not resubmit elsewhere without revisions. It's very important. So you get the rejection, you don't revise and resubmit to other journals, because most likely you will end up the same kind of story, because the issue that we address, that you don't actually look at that and do some revision on that. So very important to remember preparation and submit the right journal, scope and prestigious of the journal, and all this, and be honest to what you have done, and don't do extra things. Now, there are several ethics issues in publishing, 1022 now. So about falsification of the results, plagiarism, duplication, salami publications, and conflict of interest. So data fabrication, falsification is a serious issue. So do not engage in that. Don't make up the data or results or recording or something not true. This gives you mistrust to the future, but affect your reputation, your branding, your personal credibility. You are irresponsible and affecting your accountability. And very important, it can be dangerous or misleading to your conclusion. So please don't tolerate this kind of issues. Plagiarism is simply saying that you use someone else's ideas, words, whatever experiments, that without giving the credit to the person who has established this. So you using a shortcut for this, but they have a lot of consequences. It's very serious offense in many. In fact, all the universities or editors or scientific committees, and you can get sued for this. So really affect your branding reputation among the scientific committees. So how to avoid that? Avoid getting other people idea. You can read, but you have to come up with your own ideas, suitable in the local context, ecosystem. Never paraphrasing people words and using all this technology and paraphrase and present someone idea without credit to them, and so and so. And do not send multiple submissions of the journals to many journals. So please send one and wait for the verdict, whether certain rejection or revision. Duplications also, please avoid that. You hide your data. You want to do many publication, aiming that by the end of the year that you get plenty of, and in fact, everything is there. It could be combined in one papers, but you can use something different, like review articles, systematic review article, original articles, case report, editorial, so and so. So you get different flavor of the papers. Your paper is worthless if no one reads or cite it. So you do something not read, no one cite you. Not, I would say that completely useless, but it's clearly described that something that you do, someone else can use in the future. So it has to arouse or excited excitement among clinician scientists' interest to order to reproduce the result in the future. So you really need to know how to promote and sell your work. It is prestigious journal, so you can look at the impact factor of journal. You can Google, for example, in 2021 impact factors for journal A, you can calculate like this: the number of time article published in previous 2 years, A, the number of citable items in the last 2 years, B. So you can say that, let's say 600 citations divide for all these things, so you give the impact factors. And sometimes we know the H index of academic or scholars A. What does it mean? You can Google which there's a person who doing this. So what it means that a scholar with an index of H or 10 or 20 has published 10 or 20 papers, each of which has 10 to be cited in the paper at least H time. So if a person, let's say, have a 25 H index, meaning that he or she has 25 papers, and each of the papers has been cited at least 25 times. So that's showing that your work has got attention by other people, rather than you short scenery and keep producing and you get low citation. The problem with case report is the citation. Some practical advice for all of you, books that I rely heavily, from research to manuscript, good writing, so you can explore, designing clinical research, those who are master of clinical, and at the bench, those to the lab studies, and many other things that you can find, the journals, something that really give you practical advice. Now, this is quite common that rejections, you get the email, thank you so much, we are unable to offer you publish to your work, blah, blah, blah. So don't be very upset. Look at the comments, address the revision again, and look for the paper. So I think if I would like to do some reflection to me and to all of you, any research work, just do it. Finish your work with flying colors. Have a plan. Aim for GOT, graduate on time. Do not delay that. You just don't know what happened for the next 6 months in your life. Something terrible happened that you have to postpone. So do from day one. It is your future branding, your future reputation, future selling point, and more importantly, future career advancement for all of you. You have to be very proactive. Aim high with 3 Ds. I said to you, determination, dedication, and discipline. And keep publishing, and you'll be shining. And indeed, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So these are publishing game, basically. A lot of things, a lot of obstacles, but make it fun. Don't be heartbroken in this. So these are normal physiological. So thank you so much. I pass back to Dr. Muhammad Fairuz. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Yang Mulia Prof. Affendi, for that fantastic talk. Using your own words, okay, very informative and concise. I would like to open for questions. We actually have 3 questions here. We only have like 5 minutes left. We can allow this question. Hi, Prof. Probably from the same person here. What are your advices for those who got their manuscript rejected? What's your comment on that? Right.
So, as I said to you early on, rejection is you can take as a normal physiological process. So you need to read why was the paper rejected. Is it a lot of flaws? Do you think can be safe, can be rescued or not? No, you need to discover your supervisors. And you have to address the rejection nicely, revise the manuscript, and then aim to submit to another journal, perhaps lower rank of the initial journals, to get your chances of acceptance will be nice. So it's common unless your research methodology is extremely poor. So brainstorming, brain stealing, brain writing is very important to decide the research project. So don't be too quick to submit to ethics. Study first. What are the potential obstacles that you're going to find? Is it possible to recruit 1,000 patients? So you really have to think to see at the end, is there any light at the end of the tunnel? Because rejection, minor revision is quite easy to do. Rejection with major revision, quite easy. But if auto rejection, the work only poor quality, then you don't know where you're going. So you need to discuss supervisor. Then I will blame more on supervisors rather than the student for this.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Okay, so don't be disheartened. Okay, always keep on trying and send to a new journal. Okay, and always reflect on yourself. So the next question is, how do reviewer detect data falsification, Prof? Oh, you need to unmute.
Sorry. Nowadays, Dr. Fairuz, we are not doing research back in the 70s, in the 80s, or in the 90s. Now, it was a pleasure for me, maybe 10 years ago, I attended one of the scientific meeting, how the editor put the forensic analysis of the falsification of the images, how to enhance the Western blot, how to enhance the immunohistochemistry, how to enhance whatever they do, protein expression. So you can't do that because once you get caught, you're into trouble. So the first thing, do not engage in such a way. Your friends, your buddies can say that, hey, I do this. There's so many technology that we can do or look more nicer, but not in the publishing game. That is wrong. So you should avoid, should not think about that. Is wrong, is unethical.
That's right. Thank you, Prof. As you said, so don't ever think about plagiarism. So the repercussion is very severe. And then that's you can check actually your work into the software called Turnitin or many other softwares. So all the libraries in the universities might have it. So ask around, okay? And then the last one, hi Prof, do all the journals require some sort of payment? Do we get any waivers or sponsors?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, you are right, Dr. Fairuz. I should have said that. I think we provide turn-in-it, so you can put there. I used that turn-in-it for the last 2 years doing MBAs. It's just so relieving when you click and you get 4%, for example, right? So many institutions, they put less than 16 or 20% to be accepted. So it's very valuable to check how original that you are writing. So sometimes you can write you forever. Now, the answer is yes, if you publish in the high impact journal. Now, sometimes for me, it doesn't make sense. The supervisor requests 500 ringgit for publication fees, 750 ringgit. What do you want to do with that, Dr. Fairuz?
Yeah.
You cannot even buy Eliza for 700 ringgit. So and certainly telling me people may not be familiar with the article processing charges. The higher the impact of the journal that you're going to submit, especially open access journal, a Q1 journal or above, the publication fees might be 10,000 and above. It could be 3,000 US dollars or above. Yeah. So usually some people who get a grant. But if your aim is to get a local journal, 300, 400, so it's nothing free anymore nowadays. Yeah. But you need to get visibility of research work that you're doing too. If not, then you just wasting your time and you do that again. No one. It's like you short sendiri syndrome. So it's not good. So you have to discuss supervisors. Ultimately, where do you see that this research work will be published? Is the high impact journals where you're going to get the money? Can you get from the industries? Can you get from, and sometimes your supervisors also write reviews, becoming reviewers of particular journals. He or she can get some discount on that particular journals, maybe 50%. So save a lot of money. So there are many tips and tricks in order for that. So because you can imagine publishers also need money to maintain their staffing, their things like that, formatting. So I think it's fair, but of course, it's becoming a business nowadays that we need also to think about that. That's my response. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. So actually, the early planning is very important, and also let this be the headache of your supervisors. Okay, all right. It's not the work for the students. All right. Okay. With that, I think we're at the end of our session for now. We'll be coming back again in the next 20 minutes for the next session with our beloved Prof. Raja Affendi. Okay. Until then, at 10:30, stay tuned. Okay. I'll see you later. Thank you, Prof.